Charging the main gate of a fortified city was one of the deadliest missions in siege warfare. The soldiers who carried battering rams were exposed to arrows, boiling oil, stones, and burning pitch. Most never survived long enough to strike the gate more than a few times, and yet armies repeatedly formed elite assault teams whose sole purpose was to break the strongest point of enemy defenses. In this episode, we asked why these men volunteered for a mission that almost guaranteed death, and why commanders depended on them. Night falls over the besieged fortress. In the muddy trenches outside the castle walls, a hush descends among the attacking army. Dozens of men, soot-smeared, nervously fingering their weapons, gather around a young officer who whispers, "Final instructions. These are the volunteers, the Forlorn Hope, chosen to lead the charge. Every man here knows the truth. Few, if any, of them are expected to survive this attack, and yet they competed for this role." The officer's voice is low. Once the sappers blast the gate, we rush in. No hesitation. Each soldier nods, steeling himself. Some clutch crude battering rams and axes. A couple heft a large petard bomb, essentially a kettle of gunpowder, to blast the wooden gate. Up on the battlements, enemy torches flicker. The defenders do not yet know death is coming for them from the shadows below. The young officer silently raises his hand. Go. In an instant, the spell of quiet breaks. The suicide squad of attackers springs up from cover with a collective roar, charging the castle gate at full speed. Alarm bells clang from the ramparts as arrows and musket shots streak down. The first men carry a heavy log as a battering ram, sprinting under a rain of projectiles. One falls with a cry, a crossbow bolt through his throat. Others take his place. Without pausing, they slam the ram into the great oak gate. Boom. The timbers shudder but hold. Above, defenders frantically hurl rocks and pour boiling pitch. Screams cut the air as scalding liquid sears flesh. Still, the Forlorn Hope keeps battering, fulfilling their grim duty to smash that gate open, no matter the cost. One man, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, drops the ram and rushes forward with the petard. He braves a withering hail of musket fire, reaches the iron-studded gate, and ignites the fuse. Back, back, he shouts. The squad dives for cover as an ear-splitting explosion tears the night. A fireball engulfs the gateway, blowing the massive doors off their hinges in a shower of splinters. For a heartbeat, defenders and attackers alike are stunned deaf by the blast. Then the young officer staggers up, coughing smoke, and realizes they've done it. The gate is breached. He rallies the survivors with a ragged shout, and they charge through the flaming portal into the darkness beyond. Such were the moments for which these men had volunteered, fully aware it was likely a one-way mission. In siege warfare, the first wave through a breach or gate was often called a Forlorn Hope, a fitting name for those facing near certain death. Historically, armies knew that breaching a fortified wall was the bloodiest phase of a siege. The defenders would concentrate all fire on the gap, determined to annihilate the first attackers who tried to force entry. Yet time and again, volunteers stepped forward for this hellish role. Why? In part, honor and reward. Many were motivated by promises of promotion, cash bounties, or glory if they survived. For example, during the Napoleonic Wars, British assault. Columns at sieges were led by a forlorn hope of an officer and about 50 hand-picked men, all volunteers. Survival odds were so low that if they lived, the officer was guaranteed promotion, and the men often received medals or monetary rewards. In some cases, even convicted soldiers or those under disciplinary sentences volunteered since success. Could win them a pardon? The term Forlorn Hope comes from the Dutch Forlorn Hope, meaning lost troop, reflecting the expectation that this unit would likely be lost in the attack. But the survivors, if any, would earn immense prestige. They typically got first pick of any loot and a hero's accolades from their army. These incentives and an ethos of courage drove men to do the unthinkable, to be the very first into the jaws of death, breaking a fortress open so that thousands of comrades behind them could pour in. It was simultaneously one of the most dangerous and most honored tasks a soldier could undertake. The grim logic was understood by all. A contemporary description of British sieges in Spain noted that few of the Forlorn Hope could expect to survive the assault. Indeed, at the siege of Badajoz in 1812, one of the bloodiest stormings of the Napoleonic Wars, each major breach in the walls was led by a Forlorn Hope party. At Badajoz, an officer and 20 to 30 men fled, with another 150 close behind, as the main stormers, just as the first volunteers began climbing into the shattered breach. A French sentry's alarm went up, and instantly the ramparts blazed with musket fire and grenades. Within seconds, dozens of the Forlorn Hope were cut down, bodies piling in the ditch as more men clambered over them. Survivors recalled the breach soon began to fill with dead and wounded over whom the storming troops had to struggle. The carnage was indescribable, yet the attack continued, inspired by those first brave souls. Such scenes were common in siege warfare from medieval times through the gunpowder era, whether by scaling ladder, battering ram, or explosive petard. A few had to leap into the breach and pry open the fortress at dreadful cost. Inside the castle courtyard, chaos reigns. The few dozen men of the volunteer storming party have smashed through the main gate, only to face a hurricane of steel. Enemy pikemen and axemen converge on the smoking gateway. A brutal melee erupts in the flicker of burning timbers. Our young officer parries a halberd and is knocked to the ground. Stunned, one of his men, a grizzled sergeant, hauls him up and half-dragging. Half-fighting, they push forward. Behind them, masses of reinforcements surge through the ruined gate. The Forlorn Hope has done its job. The breach is made. Now hundreds of attackers flood in, yelling war cries. But the cost has been ghastly. Scanning the torch-lit yard, the officer sees many of his volunteers lying motionless amid the shattered gatehouse. Some bodies are charred from the petard blast, others riddled with musket balls. These men gave everything to secure this foothold. Gritting his teeth, the officer raises his sword and leads the new waves deeper into the castle, stepping over the fallen as he goes. Above, on the ramparts, defenders realize the inner gate is lost. Panic spreads among them. Some begin to abandon the walls and fall back to the keep. Others fight desperately to contain the breach, clashing with the attackers pouring through. The night air is filled with the deafening din of battle. Steel. On steel, the crack of muskets, the screams of wounded men echoing off stone. Our surviving volunteers fight on with reckless courage, determined to honor the sacrifice of their comrades who died blowing open this gateway. One flag bearer of the attackers scrambles up a spiral stair to the ramparts and plants his regiments. Colors atop the wall. A cheer goes up from below. The castle's outer defenses are breached in enemy hands. At that sight, some defenders throw down their arms and run. The psychological shock has hit them. The gate they thought impregnable has been forced by madmen willing to die to break it. The fortress will not hold much longer. Dawn finds the castle firmly in the attackers' grip. Fires smolder in collapsed roofs. The courtyard stones are slick with blood. A ragged cheer rises as the commanding general arrives through the shattered gate, surveying the gruesome scene. He knows that last night's victory was purchased dearly by the first through the breach. Among the troops, word spreads of the gallantry of the Forlorn Hope. By midday, as the army counts its dead and tends its wounded, the survivors of that suicide squad are brought before the general. Those few who lived look dazed, blackened with soot and blood. The general offers a solemn salute. On the spot, he promotes the young officer 2 ranks up for his valor, an honor automatically accorded to surviving Forlorn Hope officers. The men are fated as heroes, each promised a reward beyond their regular pay. Yet many of their comrades lie dead on the field, receiving the only reward they'd expected, a footnote in the battle story, and the knowledge in life that their sacrifice might turn the tide asterisk in the annals of military history. These Forlorn Hope assaults are spoken of with a mix of awe and horror. Accounts of the storming of Badajoz tell how the Forlorn Hope parties led the charge into the breaches under withering fire. And Within seconds, the ramparts were filled with French soldiers who poured a lethal hail of musket fire into the troops at the base of the breach. The first waves were virtually annihilated, yet they kept coming. An eyewitness wrote that bodies piled up in the breach so high that attackers clambered over their own dead to reach the top. Still, they did not waver. Eventually, Major Lord Fitzroy Somerset, Wellington's aide, was among the very first over the wall. Though wounded, he secured one of the town gates from the inside, allowing reinforcements to flood in. Foul. Thanks in large part to those initial sacrificial attacks. The Suicide Squad concept may sound extreme to modern ears, but it was a calculated necessity in siege warfare. The men who volunteered for it were often driven by a fierce sense of honor and the lure of glory. In many cases, surviving members became celebrities of a sort. The British 52nd Regiment even issued special Forlorn Hope medals after the Peninsular War to commemorate those who led such attacks. Ultimately, these scenes remind us of the extraordinary bravery and tragedy involved in breaking a castle gate or city wall. The image of soldiers racing forward under withering fire, carrying explosives or ladders, fully aware they likely won't return, is one of the most emotionally charged in military history. Their courage cracked open the door for victory, proving that even the strongest fortress could fall if attackers were willing to pay the price in blood.